Yes, everybody, welcome to another episode of Out of Your League. The beautiful Mark Flanagan. I can see him on my computer screen in the top right corner. You are a beautiful man, Mark, despite what people say about you. You know, what's inside the head on the outside still looks very good.
What did they say about me inside my head?
I don't want to be starting that sort of stuff, but, you know, just don't read any sort of forums or go on any of the websites or, you know, or any of the reviews about this podcast for that matter.
Yes, I do struggle to read anyway, so that's fine.
And speak, which is astonishing that you do a podcast. But I love you, and it's always great to have you. No John Wilkin this week, which I always mug off the other person when the other person's not here. So what can we say about John Wilkin this week that's nasty?
Well, we said he likes basking in the limelight, so he's probably basking in some sunshine in a similar sense in posh, pretentious area of Greece, I'd say.
Yeah. He was always known as the smoozer, wasn't he, at Saints? We used to call him the smoozer.
The schmoozer.
I like that.
Smoozer, he's always networking. Always trying to get his fingers in different pies.
Yeah.
Keep it going. Keep that mysterious voice. Keep it going. Say something else bad about him. Say something else bad. I mean, I'll throw in. He's like a lizard basking in the limelight. Anyone's got any limelight? Shine it on Wilkin. He'll bask in it.
Oh, where's a camera? Oh, where's it? Oh, BBC, Sky. Oh, I love
like
you.
Like me. Pay me. Pathetic. But that beautiful voice that you just heard come in there, that sounded almost sort of Barry White-esque. If you sat in your car, I just love this imagery, Mark. People are driving along going, well, then our stupid voices, but who was that? Who was that? I hear you crying. It was the one and only Michael Shenton. Welcome to Out of Your League. How are you?
Very good, thank you. A little bit emotional this week, but now I'm pretty good.
Emotional because the end is nigh, and look, this is going to be like a therapy session for you, because Mark has been through this, haven't you, Mark, over the last sort of 18 months or so. Wilkin probably wouldn't have offered much help. He would have just said something sarcastic, but he's also been through it. Big decision, Michael. How did it sort of come about? And I guess, was it made now, or did you make it sort of 18 months, 2 years ago that this was going to be the time?
Yeah, it's been made a while, if I'm honest. It was kind of going into this season, at the start of last pre-season, that kind of knew my contract was be up this year, and I'm pretty close with our coach, Daryl Powell, and I kind of knew what his plans are moving forward. He had another year on his contract after this, but I knew he was ready for a new challenge, and I agree with that. I thought the group and the club was ready for a bit of a change at the top, ready for maybe some fresh voices coming in, a little bit of a different direction. And sometimes change is good, sometimes change is what you need. And I think he thought he needed the change. And then I was speaking to him about that, and then I was thinking, what's my plans moving forward? And I knew that would bring about the end of a bit of an era we've had at Castleford here. It's kind of, since he came in, we've kind of transformed the club a little bit and changed it, and we've created a little bit of a momentum for ourselves over, I suppose, an 8-year period, really. I think we've done pretty well, and we've transformed the kind of fortunes of the club a little bit, and turned us from being a bottom 16 to a top 16. So, but for me personally, I just thought, do you know what? To go out on my own terms is something I've always wanted to do as well. It's something I've thought about, and obviously you never know when injury can strike, or you never get offered a contract, something like that might happen. But to finish as a Super League player, and that's pretty important to me. So to be able to do that was important to me. But the boys have known for a while, like through pre-season, we've kind of used it as a bit of a hook, really, that myself, Grant Milliton was just about realised he wanted to retire. He wasn't 100% sure. So we had a few boys that have been kind of in our leadership group for a while, an important part of the group, that were calling it a day. Daryl and the coaching team leaving. I just thought, you know what, it's probably a good way to finish, as finishing together as well. So that helped it a little bit. But me, 35 now, and the outside backs and stuff, it's ready for a bit of a new challenge. Not quite sure what that challenge is, but mentally, something a little bit different as well.
Try and sum it up, Mark, as well, because you tried to explain it to me, and look, someone like me will never really get it, will they? But it's when you know, and I know there's the side of your body telling you to, but it's not just that, is it? There's all sorts of other overriding emotions.
Yeah, I can a few of what Michael said there resonate with me in my final year. I think I knew in my last pre-season that I didn't want to carry on. In terms of, you have to invest so much energy, so much of your life to play professional sport, and it just, for me, it got to a phase where it probably wasn't worth it. It was taking too much out of my life, and it had too much of an impact on my body as well for me to carry on. And I thought, I'll just give it one last blast. And it was really hard emotionally getting up for every session, every match at times. But I think Shenny's probably similar to myself, that I never wanted to exist at a club and take a paycheck and not, produce the goods or do the club and the shirt proud. I always wanted to be fully invested and give a good reflection of myself, because it's a real honour to play for these clubs like Salford and Castleford with rich histories. So I knew probably at the start of my last season, and do you know what, I think when I made the decision, I enjoyed my rugby a little bit more. I probably I'd revel in a good win or being around the lads. I kind of appreciated it a bit more because I knew it wouldn't be there forever. But something I think we'll touch on later is the success of Cass. And I think for a team that was late 2000s up to like 2010, they were a relegation-ish team. They'd always be in the scrap. They'd always be down near the bottom of the table, and to see their progress over these last 8 years has been quite astonishing, to be honest, because they don't have the budgets of the bigger clubs, but they've always been challenging for playoff spots. They've always been, in finals and challenging for silverware, and they've had some of the best players in the comp play for them for the last 8 years. And I think Daryl Powell needs to take a lot of credit for that, because he steers the ship. But from my point of view, I've always known that successful teams have successful leaders and successful leadership groups. And I remember when we spoke to Damien Hughes, he coined it as a cultural architect. Those people, those personalities that go to training every day and take the field, that lead by example. And Shenny's obviously a key person in that at Castleford. So I think the likes of Millington and Shenny and Andy Lynch and Matt Cook, I'm sure previously were like that, and Paul McShane, they've got to take a lot of credit for the success that Cass have had over these last 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get onto that Cass journey, Michael. But I mean, you are the self-titled chief procrastinator, so quite ironic that you've come to a big decision eventually.
Yeah. So Tom, our media manager, has nearly grabbed me once a month since pre-season, saying, "When do you want to announce it? When do you want to announce it?" I don't know yet, mate. Let's just leave it. I'll know when I want to announce it. It's like the decision was made, but my procrastination side of it was just going, no, I'll put it off. There's always something else going on in my life that can stop it. But like I said, the decision has been made, and like Mike says, there's a lot going on there, and I think when and I kind of resonate when he was saying about once you've made that decision, you can enjoy it. And one of my main goals going into this year, I had two kind of goals, is to enjoy every moment, even the pre-season, even that kind of stuff, and all the time with the boys, all the hard work sessions, all the socials that you didn't get to have because of COVID. But then every game is enjoy every moment on the pitch, live and breathe it. And then the other goal was to give ourselves one last chance at winning some silverware. And I shared my goals with the group early on in the season, just to kind of say, look, this is where I'm at, this is what I want to achieve this year, and we had other boys do similar things, and just to kind of create that emotional hook within the team and try and do something special. And we've already been on one special run this season. Fortunately, we came against St. Helens, and we're pretty good in the Challenge Cup final. But it kind of comes down to the end of the season now, when we've got even more emotion riding on it with guys. Actually, it's real now, and we're kind of doing this. And I've done a little bit of media this morning, things like that. It's really coming to light. People asking me. I've got a game coming up Thursday. It's my last ever home game at the Jungle, which, when you put it like that, it kind of hits home like a ton of bricks, when it's been part of my life for 16 years as a professional and then 3-4 years as a junior. It's been a massive place for me, really. So no, to be able to enjoy that with all that kind of stuff, emotional kind of baggage and stuff, riding on it. It's been a pretty special year as well.
I'm just checking in there that you're not going to do something silly like Wilkin and kind of, you have your testimonial, you waste all your testimonial cash on your divorce, then you think, I'm going to retire and this is it. And then suddenly, like one more challenge, you get tempted. Someone turns up with a brown envelope with some money in it. It's like, come to Toronto. Come on, we can convince you. It's going to be the dream ending. Or is this it? Because 35 is not, I mean, if you're old, I'm ancient.
Yeah, but 400 plus Super League, 400 plus first grade games will tell you a little bit different. I feel a little bit older than 35.
Especially playing the outside backs as well.
Yeah, there's some sharp guys in there. Wilco was just playing a bit of touch and passing a dinner jacket towards the back end. So, I think I got heard what he got offered, so I don't think many people have turned that down.
I mean, look, there's no secrets here, especially as he's not here to defend himself. It's the time to mug him off, so we can disclose that figure later on in the podcast. Look, going back then to early days, I always like going back. I mean, it's a bit of a theme to this podcast, but it's a bit kind of like, I feel like Michael Aspel. I'm going to come out with a red book at the end and just give it to you. But you grew up, I'm told, on the same street in Townville as Rob Burrow. Were you mates as kids?
Yeah, he's 3 or 4 years older than me, but 100%. Yeah, it's a little cul-de-sac. Strangely enough, James Clare, who plays on the wing for Castleford, he grew up opposite me as well. So we have 3 kind of Super League players grew up in a cul-de-sac of probably 30 houses. But it was a kind of people come from like our little neighbourhood down onto our cul-de-sac to play. We used to play the game Drive Back Flash, T&P, but Rob Burrow was just a different level. You just knew from 10 years old, he was just unbelievable. The sharpness, just what you remember him as a Super League player, he was that at 10 years old. He was incredible. And just such a nice person. And just he's one of the reasons I got into rugby league, because just the way everyone looked at him, the way he was, his nature, his kind of the way everyone knew he was the best, but he didn't act like that. There's no arrogance or anything about Rob Burrow. His humility is amazing, and that's what makes him such a special person and such a great player as well. So very fortunate, really, to have someone like that to look up to.
Tell us a bit about Pontefract. I mean, for those who've never been, is Gailey's from Pontefract, Mark, isn't he? I think as well, Luke Gale. Well, I seem to remember.
He's Leeds,
massive...
isn't he?
Nah, Gailey's Miggy. He's Middleton, Gailey. Yeah,
Middleton,
is he? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
he's probably broken all sorts of codes by saying that.
Yeah, Pontefract's lovely. It's really posh Pontefract. Gailey's.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that last Devon.
But it's a massive rugby league town, isn't it?
Yeah, I know.
Who do you support then?
You're roughing it, Mark Flanagan. Mark Flanagan,
no, he's from Saddleworth. He's not from Oldham.
We're similar. Harrow and World's up here, whereas Gailey, Middleton is below here, and then we're just like on the surface, Jenny, I'll say.
All right.
What's the go-to team then? If you're from Pontefract, is it Wakey, Cass, Featherstone? Who does everyone go to?
Oh, it's mixed really. In Pontefract, Castleford, Featherstone split, and then you have Normanton, which is quite a rugby league hotbed really, but that's split between Wakefield and Castleford and a little bit of Featherstone really. So because we have so many teams so close, I suppose, Featherstone, Wakefield and then Cass. Of course, Cass have probably got the most fans. But yeah, obviously the rivalry is pretty fierce for a kind of a small area really.
I take it you've obviously kept in touch with Rob and so on. I mean, we've had Rob on the podcast a couple of times, and some of the documentaries recently have been just so powerful, so unbelievable what he's doing, and the impact that he's still having, I think, is incredible. But what do you make of Rob's situation when you look at it?
Oh, it's incredibly sad. It's hard to sum up really, but I think it just shows his courage and his character to keep on doing what he's doing, to keep putting himself out there and driving things. Then you hear about the centres he's going to be putting up and driving motor neurons kind of cause as well, and creating awareness. That just shows what a selfless person he is. And then obviously he's obviously a fantastic dad, and he has great people around him. I know Jeff, his dad, pretty well. Obviously through the GMB and things like that. But yeah, it's incredibly sad to that, but it's so inspirational as well. He's just epitomises what it is to be inspirational and that courage and stuff. To be a 5'5" rugby player and play at the level he did, and take some of the knocks he did, but also be the top of his game for so long. And then he's took that into what he's doing now. He was in coaching at Leeds, and then obviously we found out such a sad news and what he's going through now. But the way he's facing up to it and dealing with it, I think inspirational is the word for me to epitomise it.
I love that bit of imagery as well that you painted there on the streets of Townville. You're playing touch rugby with him. He's 3 years older than you. He's probably about 1'5", wasn't he, back then, but still tearing it up and ripping everyone to pieces. Look, just going back then to your Cas debut, because that was a massive moment for you, wasn't it? As you say, Pontefract lad, it's a big Cas area. 2004, you put on the shirt for the first time. 2005, because the club were relegated, weren't they, 2004. So you actually got a really big opportunity there in the Championship to kick off your career.
100%. Well, I made my debut in 2004. We had quite a few injuries to our first team, and I was going pretty well in the under-18s at 17. And our coach, Graham Stedman, got sacked. It made quite some difficult recruitment changes. We'd had people left, people like Danny R had gone, who were holding the team together, really. He'd signed up Wigan. So people that were probably what you're talking about there in cultural architects and things like that at the club had disappeared, and the club was in a bit of transition, and Graham was trying to bring in experienced guys, but with that, the older guys and experienced guys came injuries and not the durability that you'd expect. So when you haven't got those experienced guys on the field, it's very tough, and they had a tough year. And for me to come into that, and I'm not going to say it was great making my debut, it was fantastic, but as a player, I wasn't really ready for that at 17. I think back now, and sometimes you've got to be chucked in the deep end and you've got to sink or swim kind of thing, and you have to learn quick. And at some point in a rugby league career, now, whether you're 17 or 20 and you make your debut, I think it feels like that for everybody. You're a little bit out your depth, but you've got to learn fast. You've got to learn quick. And I made 3 or 4 appearances that year. But then, so the club's kind of misfortune in getting relegated that season was my fortune, really. Because then the team had to be fully reformed. They kept a couple of players on, but most of it was gone, and it was a full rebuild, mixing of ex-championship players, some older Super League players, and then promoting youth. But we had quite a strong youth system at the time. We were the 2004 under-18 champions that year, so we had quite a strong academy system in place. And the club, don't know if they had faith in us, but financially, there was no budget and stuff because the club had lost the Sky funding, the broadcast money, had to promote us at the time. So fortunately then I was thrust into the first team, and they kept us at full time. So obviously my development, that was massively beneficial, really. And a new coach came in, and we had Dave Woods from Australia, not the Dave Woods, the BBC presenter, but Dave Woods from Australia.
Big fella, Dave Woods.
The big fella, but an
he was a large
champion.
man, wasn't he?
He was, mate. Yeah. So he does still a little bits of radio and things like that around the place, but typical Aussie. But sometimes Aussies are great for the environment and building a team from scratch, and I think he did a good job. And for me, him and our under-18s coach Dean Sampson then was promoted to assistant coach. So with that came a little bit of recognition on his part that I could do a job at that level. And fortunately for me, played majority of that season.
And who else came through with that side with you? Was Craig Hubie one of them? Because
Craig played a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes when a group of young lads come through at the same time, they can start a little bit. They can start a bit of a dynasty. And they start, implementing, those character traits and that success they've had at younger teams. And I think it helps if there's 2 or 3 of the same age group coming through together. And it probably helps if they're all playing at the same time, I'd say.
yeah, helps that, but also helps us feel comfortable in the environment as well, because it can be quite daunting coming into first team. So to be with people that you're familiar with and comfortable with is sometimes easy, as much as you've got to step out of that at times. Sometimes it's a bit rough and tumble, and it's to have that comfortable nature. But we all always challenged each other. We grew up obviously through the junior ranks together and things like that, so we knew how to push each other and support each other. People like Andy Kane went on to have good championship careers. Obviously, Craig Ewby, good Super League career. Sean Lunt came through that system from Huddersfield, etc. So we had some talented boys that kind of learnt the trade in the championship at that time.
It was quite a sort of time of turmoil, really, for the club, wasn't it? Because you were up and down. You got promoted again. I think you were, National League One grand final winners in 2005 and 2007. Compared to the Cas at the peak of its powers, just try and elaborate a bit more on what was going on behind the scenes. I mean, was the club even close to folding at that time?
You heard rumours about that. They were pretty good at kind of hiding that stuff from us, but you heard stories. Certain years when definitely the club was in financial trouble, and we were very fortunate that Jack Fulton, our chairman at the time, who sadly passed away now, saved the club definitely a few times. But when we have promotion relegation, it does create a lot of uncertainty, and when you're a young player, it doesn't so much matter. I mean, it created my opportunity to develop as a first team. So for me, it's selfishly, it helped me, but the club financially took a massive hit. You lose supporters with that, you lose your funding, you lose people buying your shirt, your merchandise sales, everything takes a bit of a hit. But on the back of it, the club managed to rebuild and go again. But the problem you get there is once you get relegated, you don't get parachute payments and things like that. So it's so hard then. We got promoted straight away, but then come 2006, we were relegated again. Catalan were introduced, they were given a 3-year exemption from relegation, and we were relegated straight away. The following year in that £1 million game against Wakefield, so you talk about the kind of roller coaster it was. It's for a player, the emotional roller coaster at Castleford at the time was massive. To deal with that, the pressure it puts on you, it's incredible. I still remember the back end of 2006 now, and playing that game. I remember crying at the end of that game because we got relegated. Because we'd won some spectacular games through that year. We had a group that had bonded, but just didn't have that longevity that creates the culture that you sometimes need to win some games that you shouldn't really win. To go places and people that have got the club's best interests at heart. Sometimes when you get promoted, I don't want to say this, but sometimes I don't want to call players mercenary because you've got to do what's best for you. But you have players that, yep, I'll just take a 1-year contract to end of my career, or yeah, Casa coming, it's an easy contract for me. You want
John Wilkin, for example.
2-3. You got to remember, I can't hammer him too much because he has a big platform to hammer people back. So,
hey, don't get him on Derek Beaumont again. Well, that's for another day.
So, you want to build what Flash is talking about there is building a team around a group of young players that can hold the club and have got the club's best interests at heart. And some of the best ideas of that, your St Helens, your Wigan, your Leeds, who really promote these group of young players at a time, and you can see that their core values stand with the club's core values, and their hearts are with the club. And when you've got to build a team from scratch and bring your senior players in from outside, sometimes very, very tough to get that. And that's why I think originally we got rid of promotion relegation, and obviously we keep chopping and changing things, but that's I suppose a discussion for a different time. But for a club like
let's have it, because I think it's an interesting one. I was about to ask you, Mark, where do you sit with it? Where do you think the majority of fans sit with it? Because, Super League are tinkering 1 minute, it's a great thing, the next minute, not so much. Look, and it can rip, as Michael's kind of explained there, it can rip the heart out of a club, can't it, relegation, especially without parachute payments, etc., etc. Boardrooms want security, stability, and therefore, want franchise, I imagine. But then fans want the jeopardy. Look at the whole debate in football with the European Super League. That doesn't sit well with English British culture. We want ups and downs. We want that drama.
Yeah, I think sometimes when you're striving for drama and jeopardy, it can you can just do it for the sake of it, and you can confuse people. And there's there's leagues all the time where there's nothing much to play for, but apart from pride, and I still think there's a place for that. Personally, I'm not in favour of promotion and relegation in our sport. I think there's too much of a gap between the quality in the Championship as there is in Super League. I think that the window for recruitment and preparing teams for that next step is too short. We've seen this year Leigh have only won 2 matches, and I know last season was a bit of a mess, but Toronto, I think, failed to win a game at the start of the season. So I find that through no fault of their own, whichever Championship team is promoted are quite often cannon fodder for the rest of Super League. And I personally don't think there's probably 12 teams that are up to the standard of the rest. There's a big gap between the top 5 or 6, 7, 8 teams, and below that, on the field, off the field, there's certain teams that just making the numbers up. And I'd go back to a franchise system, and I'd allow teams from the Championship to be included as long as they meet certain parameters and certain metrics around performance, turnover, fan engagement, getting attendances up, because there's a lot more good that goes into it than just performance on the pitch. And I think we're at probably quite a crossroads in the sport at the minute with TV deals, and I know there's been a little group set up to kind of push the game forward, but I think we need some more outside voices, some outside ears and eyes, and people from different backgrounds, and rather than just relying on the same people that have ran the game for the last 20 years, taking the sport forward when it's a different world out there. There's a different sporting landscape. We're all rugby league, football, union, cricket. We're all fighting for the same eyeballs, as well as lots of social media and video game stuff. So it's a tricky time for the sport, but I kind of think that a licensing franchise system is the way to go.
Michael, what were those last couple of years like in your first spell at Cass? How much did the club try and keep you? How much did you push to leave? Because I know from what I've read, and tell me if I'm wrong, but you didn't quite think that they had the same ambitions as you. You were approaching your peak as a player, and then obviously St Helens came calling. So 2010, what was that like when you had to come to that decision to leave? And did you always think you were going to be a one club man?
Yeah, I can remember it now very vividly. 2009 was one of my favourite years in the sport. Individually, I think as a team, we got to the playoffs that year. We just started feeling a little bit different. But then we didn't kick on from that in 2010. I was playing for England at the time, and then it's just getting to the point where, well, who are we signing? What's our ambition for the club? What are we changing things? And I got caught up in a little bit of that, and things like where's the club going? And sometimes you just focus as a player, but at the same time, I had an agent at the time saying, look, there's these offers here. Look at these clubs wanting you, and you got that chance of silverware. And sometimes it's not the easiest thing to do, but I always thought, I want to test myself. I'd love to test myself and go and play at one of the big teams. You never know when you think, oh, that could be there on my next contract. But the contract before that, I agreed to stay at Castleford. I had the chance to leave then, but I stayed. And it was a massive decision, not something I took lightly. But a club like St Helens comes in for you. You've got to give them the time of day and respect that and take the offer very seriously. And I did that, and I love what they have to say. And it's always a team that's the brand of rugby they play is something that really appeals to me, and what they stand for as a club was massive in my decision to go there. Made a decision to go there. Very, very tough one though, obviously. Castleford at my heart and things like that, and been through the journey I've been on with them through the promotion and relegations, and kind of trying to grow the club from within and grow it into one of the players that was probably in the nucleus of the team. So, and not many of our players were getting offers to go to players for clubs like that either.
The cliched question, but do you regret that happening with the hindsight that you had 2 years? I know you had your injuries at Saints as well, and you were grand final runner-up. You came to a St Helens team that was in a bit of a transition as well, and obviously you had Wilkin there. You were there with Flash for a little bit as well. But having gone back to Cass, would you, if you had the chance, be able to erase that from the history and stay at Cass the whole time?
Not a chance. No. I love my time. Played pretty good in my first year. My second year was pretty injuries and didn't kind of hit the form that I should have. But no, the stuff I learned at St. Helens was massively important to my development. And I don't underestimate that no bit. And I know Wilco's not here, but he was a big part of that. And obviously, we know the media personality and people know him from that side of it. But kind of don't underestimate how important John Wilkin was to that group, and Paul Wellens. Obviously, James Graham's in there as well. But those two guys were the gel in that team. They were the standard bearers. They were the people that drove that. They stood for St. Helens. They had St. Helens back, and to see that that was their team. I know Wilco's from Hull, but really, he's grown up through that St. Helens system, grown up winning trophies with that team, and it didn't really matter what the coach said. They had their opinions on how the club should be run, what the players should be doing, how they should be kind of approaching it, how professional they should be, the standard drivers, the standard bearers of the team. To see that leadership in action is not something I'd seen before, if I'm honest. So for me, I don't think I would have. I would have stepped away and seen that, and seen the kind of winning culture that they drove. So it was massively important to my development, I suppose, in what I turned to next and the route and path I went down as wanting to be a captain and somebody that kind of stood for that kind of thing for my team. When I went back to Castleford, and that's something I took back to Castleford with me.
I remember when I was at Salford for my first couple of years, I could tell the players that had been at big clubs in strong cultures around great leaders and great environments. So that's, lads who've been at Wigan, Saints, Warrington, probably Leeds, because I think they have a different outlook on training and winning and competing. And I think having players that have been in those, surroundings really helps a club like a Salford or a Cass that are trying to reach the heights of those bigger teams and try and break through into the top 4 or 5 teams. And yeah, it's something that I knew when a big game would come along, that the lads who'd been used to playing in Wigan Saints derbies or for Leeds in the grand finals, they were used to that pressure, and because it had been a constant throughout their career previously. And I think getting the rest of the players up to that standard was something that I tried to implement and tried to push and promote through speaking and actions. But I think once you've been around that kind of environment with great leaders and players, it does rub off on you, and you can take it to where you go next. And I certainly did that at Salford.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, you made your Saints debut, didn't you? I think in the sort of the last few months that Michael was there at Saints, and obviously this is all in the build up to the 2014 grand final at Wigan with Ben Flower, etc., wasn't it? So you'd left before that grand final success, Michael. There, what kind of club was Saints at that time, pre Kieran Cunningham?
It was 2012 your last season, wasn't it, Shenny?
Yeah, 2012. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that was the year that
Simmons.
Royce got sacked. Yeah.
Roy Simmons went 2-11. We got to the grand final, and then he wasn't given too much time, to be honest. Come 2012, we had a bit of a shaky start to the season, and it took a defeat away at Bradford, and that was the final straw, really. Kieran Cunningham and Mike Rush then took over. So for as a player coming in, it really changed. Wasn't what I was expecting, really, because Kieran was promoted to coach, but they didn't bring a new coach in. They were obviously waiting for Nathan Brown the year later, and I think that did hurt my game a lot, in the structures that we wanted to play and stuff for me to play as centre. Did hurt me a little bit, and then the club made a decision that we're going to go a different path. Probably Nathan Brown in there as well. Wanted to change in there, which no issues with. I wasn't playing my best rugby at the time. Given a little bit more time, I think, and under Nathan Brown, I probably could have done something different and performed at a better level. And I think I proved that a couple of years later in 2014. I was back playing some really good rugby. So sometimes it's just you need that right coach to bring the best out in you sometimes as well. And I don't think I kind of got that at times, and obviously didn't help myself as well. So sometimes you need the change of environment, and for me, the opportunity came back to come back to Castleford was a very big one as well. Not many players go back to where they come from. They don't go back to where you've been. And I had that.
Well, you never go back, Michael. That's the thing, isn't it? I've got 6 ex-girlfriends who would, vehemently say that I should never have gone back, and it never worked out, and it got quite nasty, Mark, in the end, and there was legal cases.
Yeah, I know from personal experience you've been back a few times that it wasn't a good idea.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't work out. But look, in general, in sport, and we're talking at a time where Cristiano Ronaldo's just gone back to Manchester United. But in all sorts of sports, it never really works out. It obviously did in your case, but it very often doesn't. Was that in your mind when you were thinking about returning?
100%. There was so many things going on, but for me, it was the first real time that I suppose I'd been rejected as a player. I've always been, we'd like to sign you, we want to do this, we want to do this with you. Never really been dropped from the team, and then to have that happen it's like a bullet to the heart. It's painful, but as a sportsman, you've got to take that stuff. You've got to be resilient. You've got to move on fast. And for me, I'm quite competitive, and to be able to prove them wrong and go, no, actually, I'm going to do something here. I'm going to go back. I'm going to take what I've learned and try and implement it. And I think I came back to Castle a different man, a different player. Someone I'd learned a whole lot from my time. It was a short time, but I'd learned a lot from the previous experience that I thought about leadership, about cultures, about the winning mentality. So for my development, it was important to see that. Obviously, you need a coach that's going to help drive that as well. Unfortunately for me, I got that halfway through 2013, somebody to come in and totally enable me to become the player I wanted to be.
Yeah, and look, you had some brilliant years under Daryl Powell. And I want to get on to Daryl Powell because we had him on the podcast, and he's a fascinating character. I just want to know your views on him. But that I found really interesting that you just said there that you're competitive, so you backed yourself that if you put in your performances and you gave it that extra whatever, that you would be able to turn it around and convince people. And post rejection, I find that quite fascinating. But what was it then in terms of on a match day that you then did differently, having been turned down by Saints?
It's tough, really. I think what you take onto match day is what you do in the training field as well. It's massively important. It's getting, as a centre, you need the people around you giving you the service you need, playing the way you want to play. And I suppose that's relevant for every position. You need your teammates to be helping you play your best, and you need to help your teammates play the best. And that's why being a good team player is so important. It'll be in every team's values across Super League and every sport. So for me, it's sometimes you've got to be a bit selfish. It's called being a team player, but to get the best out of my game, I knew the kind of service and stuff that I needed and the people I needed around me as well. It is massively important, and I've been fortunate enough that I've had some pretty class halfbacks in me as well around me. You obviously need some good fullbacks. They're important in the way we like to play at Castleford, and you need players that can enable other players to play better. And I ain't scared of saying that I need some good players around me to get the best out of my game. And I think I've been fortunate that I've had that. People like obviously Luke Gale, Luke Dawn, Zach Hardacre, players like that who take people to a new level and help you be better as well is very important to my game.
I know we've had Paul McShane on, Mark, haven't we, on the pod, and he spoke so glowingly about Daryl Powell. I know it's not all down to a coach, but he said quite honestly that Daryl gave him the platform to transform himself into a man of steel, which came out of nowhere. I don't think anyone really saw that happening at his stage of his career. What was it like when Daryl turned up at Cas? Because when we had him on, he said that when he first arrived, he knew that there was a massive culture shift which had to happen, and it had to happen quick if you were going to be successful.
100%. Yeah, we weren't massively in a good place, and you could feel it, you could sense it, and I was thinking, what have I done at the time? So the club wasn't in a great place. We weren't playing particularly well on the field. We were playing terrible on the field, and there was a change that needed to be made, 100%. And initially, I think they were looking at Jimmy Lowe's coming in, but that didn't work out. God knows what would have happened there. Could have been the same, but fortunately for us, Daryl got the job, which was massive, and just his immediate stamp on the place, and he obviously spent a bit of time getting to know his players, understanding their environment. I mean, this is where we're at. When Daryl first got the job, we would I think we were knocked out the cup at the time, so we'd been given 4 days off. But Daryl thinks, right, while they're off, I'm going to try and meet a few of them before we come back in. Have a coffee away from the club, set out what I'm about, get to know them a little bit. So I meet him. He tries phoning Daryl Clark and a few of the other boys, but they've gone for a lad's holiday in Magaluf. So that's the kind of culture you're talking about. But these are young lads that rugby's a little. I think the sport and being a sportsman in general has changed over the last 5, 6, 7 years from that time. But that's where that kind of culture was, and it wasn't good. It's not what I wanted it to be, and I think for him, imagine that, because he thought somebody was taking the mick. Daryl, Daz Clark, he thought, nah, you're not Powell. He put the phone down on him. So Powell phones him back and goes, no, mate, it's Powell. I want to meet you. He's like, all right, well, I can't in a minute. So anyway, I think they met up, and then, do you know what I did though? He just got smiles on dials to start with. It's an interesting when you look back and how you'd approach that, coming into a culture that needs changing, a team that's low on confidence. But he got the boys working hard, he got fun into the sessions, he got us wanting to come to training and be around each other, and created that kind of team spirit again. And even though we finished bottom that year, we had a pretty decent run towards the back end, and we always spoke about, look, there's no relegation, we're all right, but we're building for something next year. This is about 2014, even though it was July, August 2013, he has the long-term vision to look for, look, I'm building you into pre-season, so you come in that first week of pre-season excited to be here. We're building for something a bit more special. Pre-season's not long enough for me to do this, I have to start it now. And for my individual game, he sat me straight down and we started doing some clip and some footage and the experience playing in the centre, and saying, mate, your game's got a bit stagnant. You're doing the same thing. I want to start mixing your lines up. I'm going to do these plays with you. I want you to run these different lines. You have to be hard to handle. I don't want teams doing a game plan, you going, this is all he does. And just got me thinking about the game of rugby in a different way, really. Became a bit more of a student of the game, watching different players. And for me and my development as a player and as a person, it's just been absolutely massive. He's got imprints on me now as a person, the way I reflect on things, the way I look at the game of rugby, life, I suppose. I mean, there's bits that I won't want to be like him, don't get me wrong. But there's areas where I think, yeah, I'm a little bit different in that area, but there's so many good things about him as a bloke and as a coach. Yeah, you just have to take on board, really.
I find so much of that fascinating. From my own career, probably the only coach I would have loved to have played under would have been Daryl Powell. From my experience playing in the game and knowing coaches, I think you usually have two kinds of coach. You have a player's coach that can improve you as a player and looks in little detail into improving your performance week on week, week in, week out. And then you have like more of a team manager that just galvanises a team and is more of a just team focused and doesn't really go into the detail of each player. And you know what Michael was saying there, I think he probably perfectly encapsulates a coach that does both really well. What one stat that I find amazing and doesn't get celebrated enough is the fact that in about eight years coaching Castleford, he's had 4 Man of Steels in Luke Gale, Zach Hardacre, and the 2 hookers, Paul McShane and Daryl Clark. Now I find that amazing that one coach can see the quality in each of those players and bring it out of them on a performance basis, but also probably personally as well, and get to know that player and get them firing every week so that they want to play for that coach. And like I said, I don't think his achievements as a playing coach and a team manager get probably the recognition they deserve enough. And I'm quite envious that Michael and some of those guys got to work with him, because I would have loved to have been coached by Daryl, I think.
I just wish that story had gone though, Michael, where he'd gone out to Magaluf to meet the lads, to have the meeting, to say, right, because I mean, Magaluf is a fucking weird place. Have you been?
Yep.
I mean, again, we're talking from someone, probably Mike would say, looking down from my ivory tower, but it's a bit like safari, isn't it? Going to Magaluf, it's kind of anything goes. Just the idea of yeah. Do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
It's just in the sense that I can just imagine, it's just a people watching place, isn't it? It's the ultimate place for people watching. You can go there and you don't have to be immersed in the Magaluf stuff. But just the idea of all the lads just like, we're just going to pop off to Magaluf for a week, and then Daryl Powell's on the phone, get the fuck back here now. Because Michael, for me, when you say culture shift, I find that, I mean, you could do a whole podcast on a culture shift at a club. I guess Daryl has to come in and tell me if I'm wrong. He's not afraid to upset the fans, because it's on him. If it doesn't work, he's the one who's going to be out the door. So he's got to make his changes. But I also find that really interesting that he goes to his key players, and maybe he did this to everyone, but like you said, he came to you and said, this is what, this tiny little thing, this little tweaking, this and that. He's already fully aware of what he's going to say to make you a better player, to get you on side, to get the senior players on side. And then it has a snowball effect, doesn't it? And it clearly worked. It clearly had the impact that he wanted.
100%. There's so many little details that he'll look at and that they're important, that can change the dynamic of your team and it can make somebody a little bit happier, to play a little bit better. And if you get that, we talk about 1%ers, but if you get that out of your 20-man squad, it turns out into quite a lot. Some of the stuff Flash was talking about there, and his management, and then his actual coaching ability, individuals, and coming up with game plans and tactical knowledge is outstanding. But something as well is that at Castleford, our resources aren't massive. It's not like we have a director of rugby at times, or other people driving the club side of it as well. So he grabbed all of that, and he wanted to improve the club as well, off the field, and get standards better, and get more people coming in to watch games, and the club earning a bit more money, and us kind of connecting back with the club side of it as a playing group, because sometimes that can get disconnected. And he tried very hard to do that. And so there's all different elements to that. And then if you get the boys buying into the club and the community.
How quickly did they buy into it? How quickly did he win people over? I mean, I imagine he upset quite a few people along the way.
Oh, I'm sure he did. But he ain't scared of upsetting anybody. It's just be front up saying, this ain't good enough, you need to be better at this. Whether that's someone off the field, whether you're a player, whether you're a coach, we need to be better. And one of the main things he kind of turned was what's expected of you standards wise, and looking after our environment. He said, look, at Castleford, we haven't got the best environment. We haven't got what Wigan Warriors, what St. Helens have got, but we've got is ours, and we need to make that special. So we respect it, we respect each other, we respect the environment, our training environment, I mean. So you have a cup of tea, you wash that up. There's all little bits like that in making everything immaculate. From how the gym was operating, tidying the gym, it needs to look when you leave as it did when you come in. So there's all little bits off the field that he implemented just to change little bits of getting our respect back, looking after each other. If someone else doesn't do it, you cover up for them. Because if you don't, I'm going to fine you as a team for one person's individual mistake. And with those little bits, you're like, God, it's a bit over the top in it. And that's what we all thought to start with. But then as it all comes together and you start seeing it working out on the field and in the training environment, you start thinking it makes sense. All these little bits add up to quite a lot. And then it grew to growing the leadership of the team and getting the voice of the players across and being the ones who are speaking in video sessions. If we've got an issue, is raising it with each other. And that is one of the hardest things to create, I've found in my time in the game, is getting the players to buy into that stuff and being honest with each other, because it's tough to hear at times, it's tough to say. But if you can get that honesty and then people connecting with each other and giving each other critical feedback at times, not in a bad way, it can be immense for you. So he's the kind of master of that, and he's also a good storyteller as well. He's got loads of stories. I think I've heard them all now, probably about 5 times. But he can create emotional ups that you need to buy into, and And at the moment, we're kind of going for a little bit of that. Obviously, me retiring, Milo, him leaving, players leaving. It's a bit of an ending era for us at the moment. So we're kind of going through one of those little emotional stories at the moment. That the story's kind of telling itself. So it's pretty easy, but there's all different bits that he used when he first came in was to kind of get the tradition and the history of the club across to the players and people like your Mal Reilly's, Alan Hardisties, who've been absolute champion players who've won trophies for the club, who've gone on to represent the countries, and people who've been in rugby league a long time who think of Castleford, they think of John Joyner, they think of Mal Reilly, Alan Hardisty, and he got those guys in to talk to us, and I've never had that before. Somebody that really bought into the club and the history and what it stands for. And it kind of creates that emotional attachment to the team. And for me, that it's very special, really, that someone thinks about something that deep and took the job that seriously to do that. And it kind of created what we've done now. So when you talk about people talking highly enough, I can't talk about highly enough. He's a great thing for my career and for the club.
That leadership group, getting that leadership group together seems quite a pivotal moment for me, and how he did that. I'm interested in how he got you on side and how he pinpointed you, because you became captain, and it's a great story for you, isn't it, to be, as you in your own words said, rejected by St. Helens, and you come back and you're back to the club that you love, and you're a leader of this team which is going places, and from where Cass came to be suddenly Challenge Cup runners up and winning the League Leaders Shield, and all right, the cynics might say, oh yeah, but they never won it, but they got to second. That's still a massive improvement from this club that you painted the picture of that was in financial turmoil and so on. But he had this particular, it's a bit like NFL, you have your sort of 5 or 6 leaders. I mean, Mark, you were a 16th of a captain, I think, when you were at Salford as well. He wasn't, he was joint captain, really, must have done, before he bites. But that leadership group is key, isn't it, Michael?
100%, yeah. I think when the coach is implementing that, you have to get the buy-in from the players. And the only way you get all the players on board is if your senior players, the guys that the rest of the team respects, start doing those little things as well. And to do that, obviously, you had to spend a bit of time with us, and it took some challenging. It took a lot. We'd take a lot of responsibility for a lot of that as well, and it'd like us taking some classroom sessions. We'd have to get up and talk and present, and he's done that throughout his time at the club. There's always people up presenting, no matter who you are now. It's got to the stage where it was mainly the senior guys and the leaders doing it, but over the last 3 or 4 years, we've obviously the change of halfbacks. We have a young spine, Setmaker, that are quite quiet. And to try and bring them out of the shell, you're constantly trying to evolve people and develop people, but you need your halves and your spines to be loud and vocal, and they might be off the field, that's okay, but once they step onto the paddock, they have to be good communicators and things like that. So a lot of our job really is, we're working with Daryl, is bringing those guys out of the shell and comfortable so they know what they're talking about. Sometimes they're a little bit unsure whether to say something because they're not quite sure if it's the right thing to say. But they have to learn from experience and back themselves and get there.
I'll ask you this, Michael. So I remember putting this to Daryl. Do you think, because he's been there so long, Daryl Powell, a coach's voice can become stale, kind of the message can become stagnant, and as good as and as successful as you've been, I think he even said he felt like he needed the new challenge, the Warrington challenge. Obviously wants to go out with a bang, but you said, oh, I've heard all the stories, and I know you're saying that lightheartedly, but when you're somewhere so long, you might need a new message eventually.
100%. I think 8 years coaching one team is an incredible long time, and he's done so well, and it's very rare that you see a coach be able to walk away from his job by himself on his own decision, really. So that shows what kind of coach he is and how well thought he is at Castleford. But yeah, sometimes it's different circumstances and what he was after, and a new challenge in himself, and a different environment for himself maybe. So that's the reason I think he came with that. But absolutely, I think change can be good, but you have to prepare. I think the club's had plenty of time now to prepare for it, and obviously they've got the new coach in place and things like that. So no, I think sometimes some of the boys definitely ready for a new voice, ready for someone else, see a different view. see how somebody else coaches the game is massive. But also, what our boys have learnt as well from Daryl can hopefully the new coach takes that on board and listens to those guys, because they'll have some great ideas and they'll have learnt so much they won't even know about as well.
Look, I imagine there's a few chapters that you still want to write, because you fractured your cheekbone in August. In some sort of rocky comeback, you're back in the team to lead the Tigers into the playoffs against Warrington, or against the team that Daryl is going to on Thursday night. This is could have a Hollywood ending, couldn't it?
Like I said before, it's just the story's just writing itself, this one. So obviously all the emotion that's going with it, but yeah, we've still got plenty to play for. I know it's the last regular game of the season, but for us it's playoff mode already. It's a must-win game for us, or we're knocked out. So our preparation began yesterday, just getting ready for this one, because it's such a massive game for us, and our season rides on it.
Yeah, I mean, amazing end mark, isn't it? Really, when you think and when you look back on Michael's career, really, I mean, how you played with him, Mark. You've obviously know him reasonably well. When he does hang up the boots, how will he be remembered when we're all 60 years old in a pub talking about the good old days at Cass?
I think probably when Cass have had this success these last 8 or 10 years, probably a little bit before that as well. Michael's integral to that, and he's probably. He'll be remembered for being the main man for the last 10, 15 years at the club. And, I've seen him, I've played with him, been lucky enough to play with him and against him, and I've seen his game evolve. He was always, a right centre. You probably, like you said earlier, you knew what he was going to do. It was still very hard to handle, but his game's changed. He's played a little bit on the left as well. His lines and how he takes people on has changed. And I think, to be a leader for a club that's, been underachieving for many, many years to be where they've been this last few years, competing for honours and leading a team out at Wembley and at Old Trafford is something you should be immensely proud of, and he'll be remembered as a great opponent of mine and a mate as well.
And it's a difficult one, Michael, for you, isn't it? Because obviously you're in absolute game mode, because like you say, it's such a big game against Warrington on Thursday. But you've had plenty of time to think about what next. Are you looking forward to just getting very fat like John Wilkin? What does the future hold for you? Coaching, media, what excites you going forward in the next 10 years?
It's I'm not sure I'd ever get fat. I'm just going to go skinny, even skinnier. That's just the way I am, I think. But no, I love training and stuff like that. I go mad after 2 weeks of saying, no, I'm just going to let my body heal. I'll just be like, no, I need to get back to the gym and just find it a good place to get my thoughts in order, and doing a bit of corner, a little bit of weights. Don't get me wrong, it won't be no powerlifting like we do for rugby players. It'll just be all the beach weight machines. I'm looking forward to just doing that and get a body like Flash. Yeah, just that.
Curls for days.
Just a beach body, and get the body back to some normality and feeling okay. What the future holds next is I've prepared for it. Unfortunately, I've not got something lined up like in stone yet. It's still a few little bits to sort out with myself. So hopefully that sorts out. But I've gone and got my degree in sports business management, and there's different bits that I can get into. My goal is to stay in the sport as long as I can, really. Rugby league, it's what I know. I love it. I think I've got a lot to offer. The coaching side of it does entice me towards that a little bit. It's that developing players, kind of the stuff I've spoken about in this podcast, really, and kind of implementing what I've learned onto someone else. It'd be quite an exciting role for me. So I think there's different bits where I can focus on what I'll be good at.
He's not giving anything away, Mark, but he's got Daryl Powell's got to be tapping him up. Hasn't he? Come to Warrington. It's a lovely part of the world. Lovely part of the world.
He's procrastinating again. He's procrastinating on making a decision again.
Can I come run one of your coffee houses, Mark?
Yeah. Mark will go look after you.
We need a new pot wash, actually. We need a new pot wash. You can do some dishes for us.
Well, mate, thank you so much for spending the last hour with us, Michael. And I hope you do have the Hollywood ending, because it would be such a good way to go out, wouldn't it? As you say, 400 appearances, 18 seasons in the game, and it's all coming to an end, and it could end in glory. Let's hope it does. We're looking forward to watching that one on Thursday night. Enjoy retirement as well. Enjoy getting skinny, and we will see you little buggers next week with the new episode of Out of Your League. I can't even tell you if Wilkins is going to be here next week. Are you going to be here, Mark, next week, or is it just going to be me?
I'll see how I feel.
You see who's on. See who's on, and then make a decision.
On, yeah. If it's an old friend, I'll do it like Shenny.
Pop on, brilliant. All right, give us a little follow, everyone, at Out of Your RL, and we'll see you all in 7 days' time. Can't wait to see you. I miss you already.